Welcome, this is Jennifer McGuire. Today's video is a little bit longer than most because I have a lot to share here. I actually have 3 different cards. I'm just going to share with you some ideas for using things besides paper for die cutting. So nothing like earth-shattering here, but just a reminder that you can use your wafer-thin dies to cut lots of different materials. So on these 3 cards, I will be showing you some different types of materials that you can use for die cutting, and I'll have a few fun random techniques along the way. I am using all paper smooches dies in this video, but you should be able to use whatever dies you have on hand. Okay, so I'm going to start with the hats card, the first one I showed you, and I'm going to be using cork and burlap for that. So this is actually a package of products from Tim Holtz. This is a fantastic package. I don't know how I missed this in the past. There's corrugated paper, cork paper, and burlap paper, and it has adhesive on the back. So this makes it very easy to use for die cutting. So I'm just going to take some of the cork paper and run it through my die cut machine with a hat die, and you'll notice this cuts through beautifully. Now if you do this and it doesn't cut all the way through with your die cut machine, you could simply put a cardstock shim under the bottom cutting plate, but I found that these dies cut nicely, and other dies that I tested did too. So here we have the burlap, and this again has adhesive on the back, which is great because it won't start to fray once I start working with this. Now for the little band across the hat, I decided to use a piece of really thick felt. I'm going to talk about felt in a few minutes. There are lots of different types of felt on the market, and I encourage you to test what there is. But this one happens to be a little bit thicker than the others that I have. I think it's a wool felt, but you'll see that it still cuts nicely. Okay, so that'll go right across my little hat as a band. So I have a die cut here. This is a tag that I die cut from a paper smooches die, and I'll show you that tag later, that die later. And I just cut it from some white cardstock. I have this sentiment set from Paper Smooches that has hats off to you, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that on the bottom of this tag. This tag die happens to be one of my favorites, and it's what I use to die cut all my colors of cardstock, and I keep them on a ring to keep track of what color is what. So now it's time to add our little cork hat, and this is so simple. I just peel off the back and stick it right onto the card. I have die cut regular cork paper before that doesn't have the adhesive on the back, and it works fine too. However, I do find that sometimes it kind of falls apart, and this one is a little more durable because it has the adhesive on the back. Now I just put a fine line of matte multi-medium adhesive down onto the cork to add this felt. It'll feel at first like it's not going to stick, but once it dries, that should stick nicely. That's a very strong adhesive. Now from this same die set for the hat, there are these tiny little feathers, and I thought it'd be fun to put these feathers in the hat. So I have a piece of Post-it sticky tape that I'm putting sticky side up to hold these feathers still while I add some shading to it. So I'm coming in with a C5 Copic marker. This is just a medium shade of gray. Now, even if you aren't into Copics, I encourage you to get some gray Copics because it's a great way to add shading to your die cuts to kind of give them some life. So I'm just adding a little shading down the center of these, and it makes a huge difference in the final product. Now I'm going to take the feathers and tuck them in under the little piece across the hat. And after I have it tucked in, I'm going to go and squeeze some of that liquid adhesive underneath the die cuts. This is a nozzle that I put on the top of my multi-medium, this little fine tip nozzle, and it's great for getting into tiny places. And I'll link to where I got that nozzle. I love it. It's a great way to keep your adhesive from getting clogged too. Now, since this card is pretty simple, I decided I wanted to use this die set from Paper Smooches. This is just a long stitched die, so wherever you put it, it does little faux stitching lines. And I thought I'd do 3 of these across the back of my card. This just draws a little bit of attention towards the tag that we're going to put on this card and actually just adds a little bit of interest. So I'm just using a piece of tape to hold it as we run it through our die cut machine. And I'm actually going to do this 3 times, just shifting the die up slightly each time. And this will result in 3 rows of faux stitching. I really like die sets like this one that doesn't actually cut through. It just adds interest. It's a great way to kind of spice up a pretty simple card. If you don't have any faux stitching dies, you could instead put down a straight edge and poke tiny little holes with a paper piercer and get a fun little dotted look too. Now after I put this card together, I decided I wanted some dimension on the back of this tag. So I'm taking the same tag die from Paper Smooches, and I'm die cutting some white craft foam or white fun foam. It has a little bit of dimension to it. Now, when I run it through the die cut machine, it will flatten a little bit, but it'll pop back up over time. Now, this is the exact same size as our little white tag here. So I'm going to glue the white tag on top of the fun foam, and that will give us some dimension. You could use foam tape behind this, but this gives it nice even dimension so it won't get crushed when it goes to the mail. Now I'm going to add this onto the card, but I felt like it needed something at the top. And when I tried to just tie string across the around that top of the hole of the tag, it just looked too kind of feminine, and I wanted this to be masculine. So this is something that I like to do on the top of tags on cards. I poke 2 holes above the tag and 2 holes inside the little opening at the top of the tag, and I make a little X with some twine. So you'll see I'm going from the hole in the tag to above the tag, then back through the hole of the tag to above the tag again. So it creates just a little X. It gives it a nice finished look to the top of the tag, but it doesn't make it too frilly. I don't know if that makes sense or not. And then I just use a little bit of tape to tape the ends down on the back of the card. Now there's one last little detail that I wanted to add to this card. Now in one of the die sets I showed you earlier with the faux stitching, you see that little die that creates a row of little X's? I actually cut some of those from some green cardstock, so I'd end up with this tiny little X, and I'm going to add that with some of that multi-medium matte adhesive right over the little feather part of this hat, just to give it a finishing touch. Sometimes those tiny little die cuts can be a great way to kind of add a finishing touch to a card. So there you have cutting felt, burlap, cork, and fun foam. This next example also shows die cutting with felt, along with some other things, but let's start with the felt. People ask often where I get my felt. I have 2 sources that I really like, My Favorite Things and Paper Tray Ink. I simply go there because I know that their felt die cuts nicely, and also their colors are beautiful, but there are many other places you can get felt. So I'm die cutting this felt from some Paper Smooch's feather dies. I think these are great. These are nice solid dies. If you're using a more intricate die, I recommend first adhering the felt to some typing paper, just so that it doesn't tear when you're taking the die cut out of your die. And I will link to a video where I show that technique. But with these are nice non-intricate dies. For the sentiment, I decided to use this shimmer paper from Tim Holtz, believe it or not. There's silver and gold in the pack. This is the kind of glitter that doesn't rub off. It's nice and subtle, and it has adhesive on the back, which is fantastic for die cutting. So this is really fun, different thing to do besides just a cardstock die cut greeting. And you don't have to mess with the glitter, but you get a little bit of shine. Now I'm going to throw in a totally random tip here. You see that faux stitched rectangle die cut in the background? That was actually created with that tag die that I showed you earlier. This tag die that you see here. I'm going to show you a trick to make this a rectangle instead, and it uses partial die cutting. So I'm going to take my cardstock and put the die on it with the tag top of the die hanging off the plates. That means it won't cut there at the top of the tag. So it's hanging off because only what is between the cutting plates on the platform will die cut. So I'm going to run this through my die cut machine, and you'll see that when I take it out, only the bottom portion of the tag actually cuts through. So there's an open end that isn't cut all the way through there. So what we're going to do is run it through again, this time with the die turned around. So I'm going to turn the die around, place it right in, and the nice thing is that the die kind of pops into place with the die cutting that's already done on the paper. And I'm going to make the rectangle about that wide, and you'll see the top of the tag is still hanging off the cutting plates there. And this will cut the other side of the rectangle. But again, the top of the tag won't cut because it's hanging off the cutting plates. So I'm going to run that through one more time, and we end up with a rectangle die cut. So if you don't have any faux stitch rectangle die cuts, you might be able to make one of your tag dies work instead. Okay, so now that I have this done, I'm just going to quickly show you how this card went together. I like to use that multi-medium matte adhesive for adhering my little die cuts here, my felt die cuts. Just a little bit is all you need. And I'm going to go ahead and add all 3 of my felt die cuts to the rectangle. Now it's time to add our shimmery hello greeting. Nice thing is remember that this Tim Holtz paper actually has adhesive on the back. So all I have to do is peel off the adhesive and stick it on, and I don't have to worry about putting any adhesive on the back of it. I find that using tweezers to hold the pieces and put them in place really makes it a lot easier. Now once I have this down, I'm just going to gently tap it into place, and it holds pretty well, so I don't have to worry about that moving in the mail. I'm going to finish off this simple card with some iridescent sequins. So on this card, we actually have die cutting a felt and some shimmer cardstock. Oh, and by the way, I actually die cut some sequins once, and I'll link to that video here too. Okay, so for my third and final example in this video, sorry to squeeze so much in, we're doing some die cutting of some fun foam or craft foam. I showed that earlier in this video, but I wanted to show you how you can use the die cut pieces as embellishments. Now, I looked far and wide for some really pretty colors of this craft foam, and I found this package, and I'll link to where you can get it below and over on my blog. And check out these pretty colors. There's even like a mint color in it, some pretty greens. I finally found colors of this that I like, and it's pretty affordable too. Now, I don't buy the foam that has the adhesive on the back because they don't always die cut nicely, and sometimes I don't want the adhesive on the back, as in the case here where we're going to make a little shaker card. I picked a few different colors and I cut some pieces off, and I'm going to die cut 3 tiny little hearts from this Paper Smooches die set from each of the colors, and this will go inside of our shaker box. I always find that these craft foams die cut beautifully. They flatten a little bit as you run it through the die cut machine, but then they pop back up, and it cuts nicely even with intricate dies. So I'm going to cut a bunch of these tiny little hearts, and I'm also going to cut this frame from some black fun foam or craft foam. I call it both things. So I'll have this black foam frame, and then I also, if you look there on the bottom right, I have a black cardstock frame also cut from the same die, and that will form our little shaker window. This shaker box window is going to be very easy to put together, and it's going to have these fun little hearts kind of floating around in the inside. So I need to put a backing onto the black foam frame. So I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of the frame. It's kind of tricky getting some adhesive on this. I just find if I use my adhesive runner here and press firmly, I can get the adhesive to stick to the foam. And then I'm going to lay the white cardstock on the back of it. So this is just a backing to our shaker window. After I've done this, I can start filling in the inside of my shaker window, but I like to first take my anti-static powder and rub it around the inside so that if there's any adhesive hanging off, it doesn't grab a hold of any of our little shaking hearts and keep them there. So I want them to move around freely. So I'm going to place a bunch of these inside there, and I actually grabbed some super tiny little clear sequins to add on the inside too. Now, since the foam little hearts inside the shaker window are as thick as the foam window frame itself, the hearts aren't going to move around a ton inside of the shaker window, but that's okay. I kind of like that some of them stay put so they don't all fall to the bottom. I have this acetate here that I'm going to cut for the front of our shaker window. So this is the black cardstock frame. I'm going to put adhesive on the back of it and glue this onto the acetate. I bought this new pack of acetate. This is actually a heat-resistant acetate, so you can heat emboss on it. But you could use clear packaging that you've recycled from some of your stamp sets if you want to. I'm going to cut the acetate to be slightly smaller than the frame. I'm going to put some more adhesive on the back of the frame and then glue this right on top of the black foam frame. And there we have our little shaker window. Very easy to put together. The dimension on here is about the dimension of that foam itself. So you might want to put a little extra postage on this if you're putting it in the mail. Now, I did decide I wanted some more hearts to shake around in there, so I did carefully peel it up. I do this a lot, and I find if you have a good adhesive, like the one that I'm using here from Tombow, it allows you to peel things up, but then it ends up drying nice and strong and doesn't come undone later on. So after I have all my pieces in there, I'm going to firmly press it down and add the Hello die cut onto the front of this. This is just with cardstock. So in this example, I showed you how you can do lots of die cutting, even small pieces from craft or fun foam. So that's a really expensive product and a great way to add dimension. And in these pretty colors, I just couldn't resist it. And I just finished this off by gluing it onto a small pink note card. Now in this video, I showed you several different materials you could die cut. There's also fabric and ribbon and many other things. I encourage you to try whatever you may have on hand. Using your dies to die cut materials other than paper is a great way to stretch your dies and get more use out of them. Now, I shared a lot of things here. If you have questions, please leave them in my YouTube comments below or over on my blog. I have all the products that I use linked in the YouTube description below and again over on my blog. Thank you so much for spending this long period of time with me, and I hope you'll come back soon.